All right, it's been about 20 seconds. So it says, after 20 seconds, expel the alcohol into the sink. Remove any alcohol remaining in the pipette by forcefully shaking the pipette in a downward arch several times to ensure that the pipette is dry. So, put this in the sink. And then you'll see there's still some in the tip, so we'll just want to get as much out as possible. And then I'm just gonna let this air dry a little. So now we're on step 12. Using the graduated pipette, transfer 2.25 mils of distilled water into each graduated plastic cup. So in order to do that for this, we'll have to fill it to the 1.0 mark twice, and then we'll have to fill it to the lowest mark once. We'll want to grab our distilled water, so I saved my cup, but I'll go grab the distilled water. All right, so we'll transfer 2.25 into each cup. Alright, so we've transferred 2.25 mils of distilled water into each graduated plastic cup. Now we're on step 13. Swirl the yeast solution to disperse the organisms evenly. So swirl our yeast. And then it says pipette 0.25 mils of the S cerevisiae solution into the cup labeled 10 to the negative 1. So we'll grab our 10 to the negative 1 and we'll swirl this one more time to make sure it's mixed. And then we just want to transfer to that smallest tick mark. And transfer that into the cup. It says pipette the solution up and down several times to ensure all organisms are rinsed from the pipette into the cup. So we'll just mix our solution. Then we're at step 15. pipette 0.25 mils of the 10 to the negative 1 S cerveza solution into the cup labeled 10 to the negative 2. I think you guys can probably see where they're going with this. I'm gonna move this off to the side. So here's the 10 to the negative 2, here's my 10 to the negative 1, and we'll just take 0.25, so that lowest tick mark, and transfer that to this cup, and then we'll want to mix this up. So it says pipette the solution up and down several times to ensure all organisms are rinsed in from the pipette into the cup. So I'll put this one back, and I suspect we'll be going from 2 to 3 for this next one. So now we are at step 16. Repeat the transfer process to pipette the S cerveza solution from the 10 to the negative 2 cup to the 10 to the negative 3 cup, and then again from the 10 to the negative 3 cup to the 10 to the negative 4 cup, and then again from the 10 to the negative 4 cup to the 10 to the negative 5 cup, and then again from the 10 to the negative 5 cup to the 10 to the negative 6 cup. So we will pick up 0.25 and transfer it into the 10 to the negative 3, and you'll want to draw it up into the pipette to mix it and to ensure that everything that's in the pipette gets into the cup. So I'll put my 10 to the negative 2 away, and I'll grab my 10 to the negative 4. So I'll draw 0.25 of the 10 to the negative 3 and put it into the 10 to the negative 4, and then draw it up and down into the pipette to mix it. And I'll put my 10 to the negative 3 away. So now we're going to be transferring to the 10 to the negative 5. So we'll draw up 0.25 of the 10 to the negative 4 and transfer it. And then we'll draw this up into the pipette to mix it. And then I'll put my 10 to the negative 4 away. And so we'll grab our 10 to the negative 6, and I'll draw 0.25 and transfer it to the 10 to the negative 6, and then draw it up into the pipette to mix it. And so put the 10 to the negative 5 away, put the 10 to the negative 6 away, and so it shows this for the cereal dilutions. So normally you would be using tubes, but we're using a cup, but it shows you how much you're transferring and what will be in each one, which might help you when I think there's a math component to this as well. So now we're at step 17. Rinse the pipette in distilled water to remove all organisms inside and out. So I'm just going to use this extra cup as like a waste cup. And here's my distilled water. So I'll just draw some up and do this a bunch of times to rinse out my pipette. Alright, that's probably enough.